Coming up on this week's episode of Check Your Balances, we celebrate episode number 200 with a Thanksgiving episode. Stick around, that's coming up next.
Check Your Balances is a show produced and owned by Craftwork Capital. The views expressed by the hosts and their guests are personal opinions and should not be considered personal financial advice or the opinion of Craftwork Capital. All investments have risk and may lose money. Consult with your financial advisor, tax preparer, or attorney prior to implementing anything discussed, and please do not use this show as the sole basis for financial decisions.
Welcome back to another week of Check Your Balances. I am Ross Anderson, joined as always by my friend and co-host, Dan Maseka. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, good to see you.
So this is episode number 200, unless I completely screwed up the numbering in the system, but that's possible, but it checks out. We've been doing this show since February of 2021, week in, week out. The only weeks that we tend to do a short show, really, is the one that we're on right now. We tend to do a really light Thanksgiving episode, and it happens to be Thanksgiving and also episode 200. So if you're looking for our hard-hitting content, I'm not sure that any of our episodes are hard-hitting, but this will not necessarily be our super technical, in-depth, going to teach you a lot. But Dan, I think we should just reflect on what it's been like to do this for 200 episodes, and then we can also do a little turkey talk.
Yeah, I mean, when you told me we were coming up on the 200th episode, I found it hard to believe. 200 doesn't sound like a large number until you realize that it's 200 weeks of podcasting together, which is wild to think about. I don't know how we found 200 weeks of content. Somehow we have. And really, it's appropriate that it's Thanksgiving week that we're recording this episode, because I'm very thankful for everything that this has brought us, including structured time together, which is always nice. The fact that people tune in and listen and appreciate amazes me every week. I mean, just seeing people engage with the show, it blows my mind.
Yeah. It's when we started this, and I think we had this conversation pretty explicitly, everybody thinks they've got 10 episodes of a podcast in them, right? I think there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that approach us now that they know we do this show and go, well, yeah, that's awesome that you guys are doing that. I'm thinking about doing a podcast of my own. And I think that's great, right? I am not a gatekeeper in any means in terms of podcasting, because I don't think we're special in that sense, right? Like, I don't think that we've got some perspective that was so unbelievably unique that no other voice has said the things that we've said. I do hope that we package things in a way that is relatable. I mean, if I have a talent in this world, I think that's it. I really enjoy personal finance, and I hope that I can communicate it in a way that is bite-sized enough and approachable enough that people get it and can take action on it. That's really what I hope I can do with my career. That feels like the reason we started the show, is to both develop that skill and to display that skill. But that's the thing I tell everybody is, everybody thinks they've got 10 episodes in them. What are you going to do to continue to generate ideas after those 10 episodes are done? Because it does turn into a bit of a grind, but it's also turned into a labor of love.
Definitely. I think I have 10 different podcasts with one episode of them in my head.
That could also be possible. Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm just going to talk about whatever, and it'll just be my personality and all the different things I'm interested in. That's a hard podcast to do, by the way. That's just called your friends. That right. Like, you've basically invented hanging out with your friends, but recording it, if that's your current idea of a podcast. That's also not bad if you want to do that, but that's really what that is like, oh, well, I'm going to talk about football for this episode, and I'm going to talk about stocks for this episode, and then I'm going to talk about, whatever else the next topic is.
For all the Office watchers out there, it's like Creed Thoughts, where they just opened up a Word document for him and called it his blog. It's like, I bet that'd be really scary to read. I think that's what my podcast would sound like.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably true. I get to hear a lot of those thoughts from you, Dan.
That's true. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So I guess I'm curious from your side, if I can just throw a question out there, what has surprised you most about doing the show?
So I think probably there are a couple things that have surprised me the most. The first is truly just being able to build a connection with some of the people who listen. Like, we get emails and things through our Instagram of people who feel like they know us, which I think was truly the hope. But to see that play out, it like really warms my heart because it's what we were hoping for. And it means that we are delivering something valuable to people, if not just like a distraction from their life for 30 minutes. So
I agree. Yeah. The way, sorry to interrupt you. Like when I've had folks that have come from the podcast and then ultimately like booked an appointment because they're interviewing us or they're thinking about working with us or whatever it is, their knowledge is so one way. It's fascinating, right? Because I think they do know us and like who we are because of, I'm sure we don't share everything on this show, but we share a lot of ourselves on this show. There's no way to do 200 episodes and not be authentic to your personality.
yeah, I was talking with someone recently. They asked me what the most recent guitar I bought was. I was like, oh, let me look. It's just fun. It's nice. I like having that kind of relationship with people. And it's cool that this was a platform to do that.
Yeah, no, I like that. You think we'll make it to 300? You think we've got another 100 of these in us? I mean, that's not quite 2 full years. I feel like that's a lower commitment, but are we sitting here in shy of 2 years from now talking about episode 300?
I think so. And I say that because I feel like as we do this more, we learn about different ways we can make it better and more interesting. So as we're talking, and this isn't often that we do that, we have a couple interview requests out there for people who we want on the show. Another thing that surprises me is the caliber of people who respond to us and are genuinely interested in joining us. So we have authors, teachers, educators, all these people who are willing to sit with us and talk and share their wisdom with the people who listen to us as well as with us. So I'm excited about more of that happening over the next 100 weeks and think we'll make it.
I think one of my favorite things that happens, and this actually just happened the other day, and I was speaking with a client that was working with me on a financial plan, and he started quoting J.L. Collins to me. He was like, well, I don't know if you've read this book, but, and I was like, oh, not only do I know the book, he was on my podcast and, or our podcast, I should say. And, when people talk about Morgan Housel and, the influence that he's had with his writing, I was like, oh yeah, he was on episode number 1 for us. We came out of the gate really hot. I'm not sure if people even know that now if you've picked up the show late, but Morgan Housel was literally our first interview on this show. We outkicked our coverage so far in that first episode. It was unbelievable, but we've been blessed with really great guests. So I think looking back on the folks that have been willing to join Chris Hill, I love every time Chris is on the show. I loved that Chris was so welcoming of us when he was still doing his show for the Motley Fool. And yeah, no, I mean, we've been blessed with some really cool people that have been part of this and wanted to be part of our journey.
Totally. I was going to make a joke that Morgan Housel did bless us with being a guest on episode 1 and has since made it clear that it might not happen again.
He's gotten a little bit busier. And I mean, as he's gone on to his second book and all the success he's had, I can't fault him for that. I think he's doing a lot of the right stuff. And I'm grateful that we got the time we did.
Totally. We're still big cheerleaders of his.
We really are. Dan, can we talk about actual Thanksgiving for a little bit?
Sure.
What's on your Thanksgiving table, and are you cooking any of it?
All right. So Thanksgiving for me has really 2 different forms. My personal family's Thanksgiving being one. We're a family of immigrants. It doesn't look a lot like the traditional Thanksgiving. I think the last time I was at my parents' for Thanksgiving, my dad made couscous, which is delicious, but it's also not what I think of as Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's not exactly turkey and cranberry sauce.
No, there's also that, just to appease people. But lately, we've been going to my in-laws for Thanksgiving, which is very much what I come to expect from a Thanksgiving meal. The traditional turkey, stuffing, gravy, all that stuff. The regional flavors of the Eastern Shore of Maryland Thanksgiving. Baked pineapple. Is that something you've had?
I don't know that I have.
It's like a very sweet
Is it
dish.
like a dessert?
It has a lot of dessert characters, but is not served as a dessert. It's served like a side dish to turkey. It's delicious, but that's on the table along with like sweet potato casserole and all that good stuff. I usually make the mac and cheese. I'm a mac and cheese connoisseur, or will offer to make a pie, but I'm not given many actual responsibilities with Thanksgiving meal prep.
All right, Dan, we got to go down the rabbit hole. Now, the trainer at my gym takes a strong stand. I've called this out before on the show. Tyler believes that mac and cheese is not a Thanksgiving dish. It's a great dish, but it's not a Thanksgiving dish. I firmly disagree. I think it should be part of Thanksgiving. What is your mac and cheese method? Are you starting with like a bechamel and then mixing the cheese in, or are you doing a little bit more of a casual one?
No, definitely doing bechamel, mixing the cheese in, skillet in the oven. I love the skillet mac, and I like a little bit of heat in my mac if I have it my way. So
Ooh,
a little bit of pepper diced up in there, not too intense, just to make it a good for everyone.
keeping it interesting.
Yeah, I like a little bit of crisp on the top and a little bit of heat. That's my mac and cheese hallmark.
Strong. That's a good mac and cheese, Dan. You're gonna have to make that for me one day. Next time we get together, I expect some mac and cheese
That's right. I have threatened to have you over. You've got to come over for a Friday night dinner one week.
for sure. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting year. My aunt and uncle typically host our Thanksgiving for the family, but I believe they're going to be at Clemson this year for a football game. They've got grandkids that are in school down there, and so this is going to be kind of a different version than probably the only Thanksgiving I can remember for my entire life. Like the entire time I can remember Thanksgiving, it's been some version of the traditional one with the whole family, and this year's going to be different. So I'm going to help my mom cook. We're working on a spatchcock turkey recipe
Ooh.
right now, which she called a Sasquatch turkey, which I thought was like the funniest thing. Um, she just misspoke when she said it, but I died laughing when she called it a Sasquatch turkey.
That's so
Love my
funny.
mom. But yeah, so we're going to try and figure it out this year.
Oh man, my dad, God bless him. Also, I don't think it's misspeaking. I think it's just he doesn't know, and he has a very good excuse not to. But whenever that comes up, I have a friend who I text immediately with whatever came out of his mouth. And once I saw him, it was the cutest thing. He wrote a menu that he was going to prepare. I forget for what holiday, and he wrote everything the way he would say it, and it was incredible. I'll dig out what it was. It was priceless. If I can find it, I'll read it out to you.
That sounds good. So Dan, I mean, a lot to think about this year, a lot to be thankful for, and anything you want to give a special shout out to. And I always kind of pop this on you, and I haven't prepped an answer for this either. But I guess as we kind of wrap up and let people get on to their holiday weekend, anything that you wanted to give a shout out to?
I think it's easy to let holidays pass and them just be what they are, right? It's Thanksgiving is food and football and relaxation and all of those things. And I appreciate all three of those more than many things. It's also good to just stop and reflect on being thankful and gratitude and all that sappy stuff, because it's easy to just let life take a hold of you and you go wherever it leads you. So hopefully in the midst of eating and watching football, you just look around you and hopefully find one or more things to be appreciative of along the way. I'm grateful to see your face every day. I'm thankful for this journey that we took together, for my family who allowed us to do that as well, and your family who supported you along the way too, to make it happen. So just a nice time of year to be self-reflective.
Yeah, it's funny. I've kind of changed my thinking about the holidays. And maybe this is just part of getting older and maturing and becoming a better person. But, it used to always kind of drive me nuts of like, well, why don't we get together at other times during the year? Right. Like, I think there's just people that I wish I quite frankly spent more time with and got to see more often. And so I'm very thankful for the holidays because it's kind of this benchmark where you're going to stop and check in almost no matter what's happening, right? And I think that that's really valuable. I've come to I used to get like annoyed that it's like, well, why do we only give gifts on Christmas? Like if I have somebody that I want to give a gift to, I'm just going to give it to them, right? Like to me, there's like a silliness to the tradition, but again, there's a lot other things to Christmas and to all these holidays than simply gift giving or whatever your family traditions are. But I do think that having that thing, that stake in the ground where you're like, well, this is what we do. And whether you change those traditions or not over time, that it gives you a moment to step back and take a look at it. And hopefully to turn it to a quick personal finance note, this is what the money's for, right? This is what you're saving for. Saving and investing and growing your wealth and being smart with your money is fun. It's interesting. It's rewarding. It is its own sort of kind of game that we play where we're kind of the rules are changing, but we're all kind of playing a bit of a game, but it matters. And the reason it matters is that it's to enable a life, and it's to enable your family to have security and independence. And I think this is a good time to be reflective of that as well.
Yeah. Amen.
Let's leave it there. That feels like an elegant ended spot for our show today. We appreciate everybody that tuned in. If you're driving, please be safe. Travel safely. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your families. We look forward to catching you next week.